that you probably don't want to go to the first show of the tour. Because like Wollongong, with respect to that great city, they just saw the worst version.
One Wollongong boy.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry to disrespect your city like that. But it's just like, I've got Perth tomorrow night, and the show, especially the first 2 or 3, it will be so much better. And then after about 3 or 4 shows, it'll be like locked in. Because it's just like in the clubs, you're only doing 10, 15-minute spots. So it's hard to know the order. And like sometimes like when you're like 35 minutes in, you're like, this is coming across a bit weird because of this thing I said 20 minutes ago that I didn't. Do you know what I mean? It's sort of a different thing doing it for the hour.
For sure.
So, and when you're doing like the club spots, they only go for 10 minutes. So you can sort of only get so much practice.
100, yes. 100%. I feel like your job is a job I do not envy.
Yeah, I guess everyone says that just because they don't like public speaking, but...
See, I love public speaking.
But you don't like the comedy aspect?
Well, there's something about purposely... Like, if you're funny by accident, it's received so well. Yeah. But if you're trying to be funny and you're not funny, fuck, it's a rough
embarrassing.
night.
It's humiliating because it's so obvious how hard you've tried.
Yeah. Are we starting?
I don't know. I didn't know what was happening.
I reckon we just start.
Yeah, start the pod. You lead the way, mate. We have a lot to talk about.
We do. We do. It's so good to have you here, Billy Darcy, on tour at the moment.
Thank you, Brad. Thanks for having me, mate. A lot to talk about. I feel like a bit of a fish out of water in the Mentored Studios, to be honest, mate. I feel like so much wisdom has been given out at this table, and I don't know how much is going to come from me, but I've got a great attitude, and I'm here to try my best.
Well, I heard someone say once that they've made a career out of being the dumbest person in the room as a podcast host, and I guess today maybe you level me out.
Yeah, 2 peas in a pod. Maybe it might be a bad pod. You know, yin and yang. You need one smart guy to lift up the other bloke.
Well, I will say I do particularly enjoy talking to people in your space because I would like to think that I'm funny, but I have a feeling that maybe I'm not. And so this brings a bit of humour, brings a laugh. For me, it's refreshing to be able to sit without feeling like I'm disrespecting someone's work. Like if I've got an author on, you might listen to or read the book. Usually for me, it's listen. And they've put this body of work together that you're trying to make sure that they get to share a whole heap of the elements. So you're really conscious about the direction in which you take it.
Yes.
Like today, I can put my feet up and we can have some fun. What
you're saying is the stakes for this episode are much lower than the others. But that's okay. I feel like they're much higher for me and much lower for you.
Oh, well, mate.
So it's a good mix.
The pressure's on. The pressure's on. But tell me, so one thing that I was curious about is you're on tour at the moment.
Yeah.
As you sort of mentioned to me before, when you're on tour and you've got a new hour, you're learning on the fly. But how long does it actually take you to bring an hour together? Because that's big time.
Yeah, and it's a great question because it takes ages. So basically, in Australia, we have the Comedy Festival series every year where every major city has a comedy festival and they sort of run from February through to May. So basically, you need to have the hour ready to go in February. So, and you might do some encores or whatever. So basically, you've got from about August, September, depending on where else you're touring, through to February to come up with 50 new minutes of material, I would say. You can riff a bit and stuff. But it is a lot of work. And the problem with comedy is that it's not like music. I can't get some sick Airbnb, couple of chicks with nose rings, guitars, and we just go up there for the weekend and we hash it out. It doesn't work that way. Comedy, you have to do it in front of the audience. So it's quite a painstaking process. And there's this saying in comedy that you write and the crowd edits.
I like that.
Yeah, I like it too, begrudgingly, because it just means the whole thing's very time consuming. But it is true because there's times where I have written some stuff in my notebook and I'm like, dude, how is this pen not like catching on fire right now? Like I am merely a vessel for the Lord above. That's how good this is, what I've written down here. This is generational stand-up comedy. And then you say it in front of 50 to 60 people or whatever for the first time and you're like, that's not anything. That's actually, it doesn't sound anywhere near what I thought it would sound like. As it's coming out of your mouth, you almost want to grab the words and pull them back. And that's where the crowd comes in. So it's a painstaking process, but it's necessary. And that's kind of the fun part about stand-up comedy as well is I think the gap between what the crowd wants and what you want is where like really good stand-up comedy exists.
Let me ask, how much of the audience receiving the comedy well do you think is a balance between very good content and great delivery?
Oh, writing versus delivery?
Yeah.
Well, it's another great question, Brad. It's another great question. I'm having to think about this.
Because one thing, just as you say that there, like it made me think when you're saying like the words are coming out of my mouth and sometimes you want to pull them back. You think about the times in your life, you may not experience this because you're obviously geared for what you do, but the times in your life where you're sitting in a group of people or, you know, maybe you're in an environment where you get the opportunity to speak up to a large audience and something funny pops into your mind and you're starting to play through your head, at least if you've got a bit of a filter like I do. You know, I should say this will get a laugh. And then the longer you think about it, the more you pick apart whether it may or may not be funny. And if you deliver it with just the slightest question on your own confidence, it can really miss.
Yeah, and to your point, you could have the best joke on the planet. Every word is perfect. If you flub one word, if you're like, I was walking down like, it's over.
You're gone.
So delivery is so important. And there are some comedians who barely write anyway. They're like all delivery. They're all performative, riffing and crowd work and stuff.
Who would that be?
Who would that be? Someone like probably like Chris D'Elia or I don't know if you can reference him anymore on media platforms, but there's guys who are more like high energy, sort of crowd work, riffy guys, or just guys who are not that mechanical with the way they write. They don't necessarily write things down. Kate Dolan in Sydney, she does like heaps of voices and she can dance and she can sing. So she's doing... her set on paper would look nothing like what the bloody hell she's doing on stage because she's doing all sorts of shit. So other people, though, they stand there completely still, barely blink, and just deliver the words completely monotone, and that works for them. So it is horses for courses, but I would say, to your point, delivery does matter heaps.
Yeah, Kate sounds like she's hedging her bets. She's got a couple other things going on.
I think Kate just has more than one talent that she can lean on. If I could do anything besides stand-up, I would also add it into my act.
Oh, I love it. I want to ask, so I was just browsing through, doing a bit of research in the lead up. You know, as I said...
Got to be some of the easiest research you could do. I watched 5 reels in preparation for this podcast.
Well, there's a couple of things that stood out to me. So we'll talk about one of them in a moment. We'll bookmark it, maybe your former professional sport aspirations. But rather, one thing that I found quite interesting, which actually shocked me, is on Melbourne, I think it was Melbourne Comedy Festival's page, they quote that you are ranked the 17th best comedian in Australia right now.
Yep.
How does that work?
Okay, so that's another good question, Brad. You're 3 from 3. Now, you're probably thinking, I didn't know there were official stand-up comedy rankings in Australia.
That's exactly my thought.
Yeah, and the reason is they don't exist. I wrote that blurb myself. And I very humbly ranked myself at 17.
Yeah.
And according to my rankings, not to speak out of school, Tommy Little's at 16. And with a good showing at this year's Melbourne Comedy Festival, I'm looking to leapfrog Tommy straight into the top 10.
Mate, I like your chances of that. I must admit, I read it, and the first thing that come to mind was Jimmy Carr's quote around trajectory is more important than position. You know, like you.
Jimmy Carr needs to have a fucking day off, doesn't he? Have you seen Jimmy Carr on podcasts recently? He's so earnest.
He is really thoughtful about.
He's so thoughtful.
Where he's headed. It's actually quite, to be honest, one of my favourite self-help books ever was his.
Oh, really?
Have you read it?
I haven't read it.
It's called Before and Laughter.
Oh, it's a great title.
And I think it was COVID maybe, like during the pandemic lockdown periods, you know, stuck at home, you're looking for things to do. Not much of a reader, but enjoy a listen. You know, kind of multitask. Not very well, but you can try. And listening to the book, and I was like, this is actually...
He's pretty smart, Jimmy Carr.
Yeah.
What was the book about? How is he...
Essentially about his journey to be a comedian, like leaving a position. I think he was like in a marketing position for an oil company and sort of gave himself a 6 or 12 month window to live in his mum's basement and have a real crack at it. And
yeah, I heard when he first started, usually open mic comedians are like so broke, getting around, free beer here or there. But apparently when he was doing the open mics, because there's so many in London, he had his own personal driver. Because he was like 30 when he started and he was minted. Yeah. So he had a guy, he would go in to do the open mic and his driver would wait out the front and then drive him to the next one. Pretty crazy start. Jimmy Carr, though, this is the thing that cracks me up about Jimmy Carr, is he's made a whole career out of telling like one-liners and knock-knocks and riddles about like, molesting some bloke's mum in the front row. And then like 20 years later, once he's a multi-millionaire, he wants to turn around and be a life coach.
Yeah, hey.
It's the weirdest backflip I've ever seen. Like, I chucked on a podcast because I was like, oh, Jimmy Carr, yeah, cool, I'll listen to this. And I thought I had hit the wrong episode. It was like David Goggins or who's the Tony Robbins, that's what I'm looking for. It was like Tony Robbins had subbed in for Jimmy Carr and they like dubbed his voice or something. I don't know what happened to Jimmy Carr. I don't know if he like found out God is real or something, but this guy, something happened to him in the last 4 years. It's a crazy turn.
I feel like it's a real intelligent pivot.
How so?
Maybe similar to Kate, if you got a few extra strings in your bow.
Yes, maybe once again I'm just jealous of someone else with a second string.
A few more ways to cash a check.
Guess so. Yeah, well, the self-help industry is a great industry to be in right now.
I'd say questionable.
Isn't this like a self-help podcast? Are we not in the industry?
I would say we're in the industry, but I'm not sure whether financially it's doing that well for me at the moment. So
okay, fair enough.
Yeah, maybe I need the suit and the British accent though.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that certainly helps.
But what did you say before I cut you off about the Jimmy Carr thing?
Trajectory, more important than position.
Trajectory more important than position.
So I feel like there's 16 chances for you to continue to improve the quality or at least the way that you feel about your life.
Yes.
Like 16 more opportunities to brag to mum and dad about how actually the thing that was going to be the thing that was going to be you throwing your life away in pursuing comedy is actually,
Jesus.
Well,
I would say it's in the balance right now. I would say my life I'm mid-throw.
Yeah. I'm
mid-throw, but I could still pull out. But yeah, I'm currently ranked 17th. But like I said, mate, well, to your point, trajectory.
Yeah.
And if I have a good showing, once you get in that top 10, it's gravy.
Yeah, I did find it quite funny to hear that, with a really good showing, you could crack an opportunity at Channel 10.
Yeah. Basically, it's because I just put everything into like sort of sports language, I guess. Like, I wish there was rankings in comedy, and I wish comedy worked more like sport sometimes, because comedy's subjective and sport is objective. So it makes more sense. So comedy, if something goes your way, that's great. But if it doesn't go your way, that's not great. But the reality is you don't really know either way what the bloody hell's going on. It's just whether some guy with a fringe happens to like you. And so it can be, what's the word I'm looking for? Sort of puzzling, I would say. Because people get stuff ahead of you and you're like, should I have got that? But then you probably get something. And the other person's thinking, why did Billy Darcy get that? He's a complete clown. So it's not as obvious what's happening. It's like, the arts, who knows? Whereas I used to play cricket. You get 100 in second grade, you get promoted to first grade. You get a duck in first grade, you get sent back to second grade. It just makes so much more sense to me.
You strike me as the kind of guy who would have been all over Sandpaper Gate if you had made it to the Australian cricket team. Are
you saying I would have been doing it, or...
I'm not suggesting anything. I'm just thinking you would have been close to the source.
I would have been close to the source. Yeah. I would have been part of it. If Steve Smith asked me, or David Warner, if David Warner asked me to do something, I don't think I would do it. But if Steve Smith asked me to do something, there is no limit to what I would do for him. So
there's a word for that. It's loyalty.
Yeah.
Yeah, loyal character. That's what I meant.
I would risk a 1-year ban for Steve Smith. What a guy.
Mate, tell me about... So... what you're doing, of course I joked before about throwing your life away. I quite admire somebody in your space. I think that anybody who has the courage to do something in the arts and really chance their arm at it, it's very high risk to reward ratio, right?
Yes.
Because probably 95% of people in the arts don't make anything from it from a career perspective. And that's not to suggest that that's the only important, or the only reason to go and do something in the arts, of course. But certainly when you're committing so much time to it, the stakes are a little bit higher that if you don't figure it out, there's a portion of your life in which, you're condensing the period in which you can go and figure out the next step and the next pivot.
Yeah, I guess so. I just turned 30 this year, and that makes it feel a bit riskier because I feel like when you're 20, everyone should just do whatever they want until they're like 27, for sure. When I was 20 to 25, I was doing stand-up comedy, and it's just a dream because you're so young. You think, oh, I'll make it no matter what. Everything's in the future. So it's so good. Like, I feel like the time to really take a swing at something is your 20s.
Big time.
If I leave this podcast now and quit stand-up comedy and never come back, I'm still only 30. I could go do something else. But your 20s, I kind of feel like that's what it's for. Kind of...
I agree.
Not failing. I don't want to say my whole 20s was failing because I did stand-up for 10 years and became a lot better at it and that sort of stuff. But if you were to assign a large portion of your life to failing, I think your early to mid-20s would be a pretty good bet. I think that's what freaks blokes out when they never try anything and then they're 52 and they start going to open mics and their missus is like, you have to drive the kids to soccer training. And they're like, I've got 7 minutes at the Terry Hills Tavern. I can't, you know what I mean? Because it's the wrong time to be trying open mic comedy, I think.
Let me ask you this, because I think that there's a common perception amongst any kind of arts pursuit in Australia that you're dealing with a smaller portion of the market than you could be if you were over in the US or the UK. Has that ever crossed your mind?
Massively. Think about it every second of every day. Obviously joking around a little bit, but it is true. I would say not necessarily that you're dealing with a smaller market share, because there are comedians in Australia that are huge in Australia, like Luke Kidgel and like Carl Barron, obviously. But the numbers Luke Kidgel does around Australia are absolutely insane. I don't know how much money he makes, but it must be heaps. Like, the guy is absolutely killing it. And off the back of his success in Australia, he's now touring the rest of the world. And so that's probably a internet thing as well. And I think the internet has made it less so that you have to move away. But I think the thing is, in Australia, we don't... I think we have enough people for musicians and actors and comedians to make a good living here. But in Australia, this is just my opinion, we don't value our own art and we don't support it and we don't platform it.
Until it goes abroad.
Until it goes abroad. If I made it in America, then all of a sudden everyone in Australia would be like, oh my God, he's one of ours. But in Australia, like, our FM radio stations play no Australian music. No one watches Australian films. Like, Australian television's probably doing quite well at the moment from the streaming services. Australian musicians, like, they're having such a tough time. So I think we just don't celebrate our own art enough in this country. I think we are kind of waiting for someone else to tell us what's cool first. And like, just with music specifically, like, Triple J plays heaps of Aussie music, but it's like up to them to carry the whole industry. And then all of our music festivals, they're all headlined by overseas acts because we don't build acts big enough to headline our own festivals. And if you go to other countries in the world, be it comedy or music or acting, no one out there is like, oh, we love Australian art. If anyone's going to get around Australian art, it has to be Australia.
It's a very good point. I was speaking to Dave Hoey, who won half a Granny Flat comedy.
Oh, yeah.
Dave was on the show recently, and he, has just gotten a big opportunity to be in Last King of the Cross on season 2 of that. And
sick.
We were kind of chatting about that whole experience, and I was saying that, to be honest, for the first probably 6 months that people were recommending to watch that series, I was a little bit hesitant because there is kind of a narrative that Australian television isn't as good.
Yeah.
And then I sat down and watched it, and it was fucking brilliant. Like, we binged through it so quickly, my fiance and I was like, this is bloody amazing.
Yeah.
Such a good series. I'm so glad I committed. And, he was saying that's part of the frustration of a lot of his friend group who have dedicated so much of their time and energy to the arts in Australia. And it's really hard on the uptake for people because of that maybe form a narrative.
Yeah. No, definitely. It's definitely a thing. I think it's part of the whole tall poppy syndrome thing we have in Australia. We have like sort of a low self-esteem as a country. And I should come clean that I am mildly stealing this take from, who's the guy who plays Elrond on Lord of the Rings? Hugo...
Oh, you fucking lost me.
Hugo Weaving? Is it Hugo Weaving? The actor. He plays Elrond on Lord of the Rings.
Which one's Elrond?
He's like the big elf He's like the sort of the father elf. He's Aragorn's wife's dad.
Fuck, mate, you've lost me. But
edit this out of the pod. But he was saying that as well, that in cinema and television, that's also his opinion, and he's worked for like 40 years. But even like, just to come back to music, but it just frustrates me so much. Like the Hottest 100, like Kendrick Lamar or Doja Cat will win, and everyone's like, banger, but there'll be like 2 Australian artists in the top 10. Like, why isn't the countdown just only Australian artists? And it's the same with stand-up. Like, there'll be great Australian comedians playing to crowds where I think they should be playing to much bigger crowds. And the reality is that, like, stand-up comedy is not really part of sort of the cultural zeitgeist in Australia. Like, if you went up to people on the street and you asked them their favourite comedian, but they couldn't say Carl Barron or Hughesy, most people would have no idea. But then, you know, Tom Segura comes to town, he'll do like 3 arenas sold out. So people in Australia do like stand-up comedy. They're just not exposed to Australian stand-up comedy. People in Australia do like music. So why wouldn't our musicians be fucking enormous?
It's really interesting you mentioned Carl and Dave Hughes, right? Because they're probably the only 2 comedians I can personally say that I've seen on Australian mainstream television. Like,
well, there you go.
You know, like The Project or those kind of shows that get a comedian on for a 3 to 5 minute spot, you know, tell a few jokes, talk about their tour, whatever it is. But we kind of don't have a place for that anymore, where in America, we have late shows and...
Yeah, we don't have any of that. The gala at the Melbourne Comedy Festival used to be on Channel 10. I used to watch that growing up. And that's sort of the thing you're talking about, where it's a showcase, everyone does 4 minutes. And you can sort of, if you live in Melbourne, I like this guy and this girl, I'll go see them. Whereas now it's on, you know, ABC too. And shout out to the ABC, I'm not knocking them. But it's obviously not getting as many viewers. And then apart from that, there is no platform for stand-up comedy spots in Australia. So when you say, do you think about going to London or America? I would like to probably go to London, just because I don't think I'd want to live in America. Been there a few times. And it's more the opportunities within stand-up itself. Like, stand-up is just more relevant in England, full stop. They have like more platforms for it. People go to see it more often. So yeah, it's like sort of, as far as Australia, you can make it in Australia, and plenty of people are, but there's just fewer opportunities, I would say.
So if you're at 17, Tommy Little's at 16, where does that put Carl Hughesy and Luke Kidgell in the mix?
Oh my God, you're going to get me in trouble, mate. These are all my boys. Mate, who knows with Carl Barron? Carl Barron's like mercurial. I don't know anyone that's even met him. He's like, if you contacted him to be on this podcast, I assume he would not get back to you. He doesn't do any pods. He doesn't do any lineup shows like in the clubs.
Like you haven't watched the podcast back, have you? I've had him on twice.
Have you?
No, I'm taking this.
Oh, that would have been sick. But yeah, he's like, Carl Barron exists like in his own world, and he just does so many numbers on the road that he's not really in the cities much. But I don't know what he gets up to, Carl Barron. You could, like, Carl Barron is probably, you know, he's got to be the undisputed best comedian to come out of Australia. You would have to say.
Agree.
Or the biggest and the best. Because Jim Jeffries came out of England. He was born here and lived here, but he became a stand-up in England and then America. But Carl Barron's got to be, like, just the undisputed GOAT, I would say.
Yeah, mate, he's very good. He is very funny. I'll say there's something about the Southern Highlands of kind of just past the Illawarra region where I live that Australian comedians have an affinity for. I'm pretty sure that Carl bought a farm in Robertson.
Really?
Yeah, and so does Arndo. And I know there's at least
Is this
one
just
to two
everyone
more.
Who got famous on the footy show is living next to each other in Robertson?
Fatty Vorton somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, you got Peter Hellier over the back.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Great. That's great. It's funny you mentioned Luke Kidgell before. One of his touring partners, Blake Pavey, who I know pretty well through the podcast and just conversation and kind of an acquaintance of mine. He also has cystic fibrosis.
Yeah. I know Blake. Yeah, I've opened for him a few times.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. It's cool to see how, I guess, this online game, and Blake and I connected through COVID, has really changed comedy.
Yeah, I guess so. And that's kind of the thing as well, as far as moving away, is that, I mean, you could make it out of Antarctica now, technically. If you put up a wicked reel, it doesn't really matter where you are. So the internet has made it that you don't necessarily have to travel to these hubs. Stand-up comedy is probably a little bit different because some cities have more clubs than others and that. But, you know, I'm trying to think, like, Frenchie is massive and he was all online. He was out of Wollongong. And there are comedians from regional areas that have made it massively because of the internet. So I would say before the internet, if you got nothing going on in Australia, you probably would want to move overseas. But now you have the internet here. I mean, the internet, it's... people complain and shit, and like, you know, sometimes I've put up like my sickest stand-up bits and it gets like 7 views or whatever. But there is something cool about it as well, where when you're posting a clip or a content or whatever, something could get like 20 million views and just change your life. Like, it happens to people, not all the time, but I've had mates where they've had like a 25 million view clip and then, you know, they're off to the races. So it is cool.
Mate, it is. My most viral clip on Instagram is Andrew Hamilton calling me a fucking nerd and a fucking loser.
Really?
Yeah.
Mate, he's called me that a few times and I didn't go viral. At least you got something out of it, brother.
It's so funny. He was telling his story on the pod and it was a virtual one, and I'm, you know, trying to, I guess, get to the bottom of his story, and I'm like, mate, I can't even pretend to be able to relate to that because I've never taken drugs or, you know, and he goes, fuck, what a nerd, what a fucking loser.
Mate, don't even believe that bloke. The guy carries on like he was the last king of the cross or something. he carries on like, you know, there's going to be an underbelly season about him. The bloke got done selling mushrooms and did 6 weeks in a Randwick prison. You could probably see it from here. He was pretty much on the beach.
He made fucking dog pizzas for a living. Like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then he's come straight out of it into stand-up comedy, mate. He comes from a lot of money, Hamo. He will be just fine, okay? This story is peddling around the country that he's like did 5 years in maximum security or something. Don't worry, he's all right. He's called me a nerd many a time, and I didn't even get to go viral. So I think you're doing pretty well.
Oh, I appreciate it. Tell me about your life growing up and your background. I'm always curious how people get into their line of work, and I guess there's probably a perception that if you're a comedian, especially if you're going to step into the stand-up world where it is so brutally live and it's happening, and like you said, you can't hide from the feedback. Were you always kind of the funny kid?
Yeah, I was pretty funny, a bit of a class clown, but yeah, if you're asking, did I have some sort of a fucked up childhood and that's why I have to stand on a stage every night, the answer is no. I kind of wish I did, because then you probably win more awards if you did have one. But no, I had a pretty idyllic childhood. I grew up in the suburbs of the Northern Beaches, just played heaps of sport and stuff.
Aspiring cricketer?
Aspiring cricketer, yeah. I was not into stand-up comedy at all, really. I don't know if like teenagers are heaps into stand-up. I don't know. But I wasn't. Yeah, I wanted to play cricket for Australia, but I was not very good at cricket. Like, nowhere near good enough.
When we say not very good, like there's... Mate, you can't hit your dad's underarm bowl.
Oh, no, yeah.
But...
No, I played grade cricket in Sydney.
Okay.
I got to second grade, but I never played first grade. But the good thing about cricket is that it's not like stand-up where if you want to be a cricketer, if by like 17 or 18 you're like not very good or not really progressing, then you just have to move on because you age out of sport. Whereas stand-up comedy, you never age out of it. So blokes are like 48 still at the open mics thinking, fuck, if I just get one bit, you know, if I could just have Andrew Hamilton call me a fucking loser on camera, maybe I could be the next big thing.
Yeah.
And there are comedians that blow up at like 52. So it's sort of the never-ending carrot, stand-up comedy. I like sport because it has the courtesy to tell you to move on via your biological age.
Yeah, very true. Is there kind of a style to the way in which you deliver your stand-up?
Who could say? I have no idea. I have my own little cadences and rhythms that I like to hit, like everyone, but nah, not really, I wouldn't say.
Because I'll say, you know, not to piss in your pocket, I obviously asked you to be here. You didn't ask to come on the show, so it was my request, and I actually find you quite funny. I find that we
Thanks, Brad. Yeah. Clip that, hey? Jesus Christ, 35 minutes in. You're supposed to open the pod with that, mate.
Yeah,
I've got no confidence over here.
We'll put that in the intro.
Yeah. The magic of editing.
Before the bit where I say, are you potentially throwing your life away?
Yeah. I was about to say, you are treating me mean to keep me keen, brother. It is working. I have an erection.
Yeah, I'm glad. It makes two of us.
Okay.
The one thing that I find with stand-up comedy is I don't go and watch a lot of stand-up specials. I I have to really like somebody in the short form to go and watch stand-up. I think it's because we have such an abundance of opportunity. I really enjoy comedians in conversation. Maybe that's just a bias of being in the podcast world.
Yeah.
So I love listening to the natural flow and finding them and how they're funny when it relates to real life situation and scenario.
Yep.
Because as I'm sure you're more well aware than I am, stand-up is a performance in the moment.
Yep.
Right? But one of the things that I find is interesting is when you get somebody who can just fucking have clip after clip, moment after moment that is so funny in a set. And you either wear one blue shirt everywhere or there's some very clear evidence of the fact that you're very funny bit and bit again.
Oh, right. Yeah, well,
gig.
it's all for the same show.
Yeah. Which I think says a lot about the quality of stand-up that you do.
Yeah, thanks. Some people say you shouldn't do that because then, like, you should... I guess ideally you'd want to be wearing different shirts in every clip, but then you have to film, like, 75 shows. And I don't know, I haven't put out a stand-up special, to your point, because I feel like I put out the reels, which I think can be, like, 2 minutes now. But I haven't had any reels get like, 25 million views or whatever. So it almost feels, I don't know if I should put out the full performance because people say, oh, why don't you pull out the full hour? But it's, I don't know, like just with stand-up specials, they reckon on Netflix that people can't make it like 11 minutes into these things. So like people put out these unbelievable hours on Netflix, but no one even watches the last 20 minutes or a very small percentage of the people that hit play make it through to the end. And I think our attention spans are just so shot to pieces at the moment that, and also the algorithm, you're supposed to post 75 times a day or whatever. So it is good as well. So you could have sort of a few more attempts at trying to get someone to see your stand-up. Sure. But I think I've actually changed my mind about specials because I was listening to this thing about music the other day and they reckon albums are still where it's at, even in the TikTok era. They reckon albums is like how you'll make someone might like you for a single, but you'll get a real fan out of an album. They'll come to see you live off an album.
It's an interesting point you make. It's almost like clips are top of funnel, and when you find your crowd, you find your people.
Yes,
the specials for them.
Yes, which I didn't really understand what a funnel is before. Whereas now I think you've just illuminated the whole thing to me.
I'm glad. I'm glad. It's interesting. I was listening to on the way up here this morning. I had a long drive and I just come across randomly online. So, Whoop, the fitness wearable. The CEO of Whoop has been on this show before and he's got a podcast aligned with Whoop. And he had random guests because he usually has kind of like athletes and people in the fitness and health world. He had Mike White, the guy who wrote White Lotus.
Oh, sick.
Yeah. And White Lotus is one of those shows that I think goes against the grain of modern TV, where he was kind of saying that he watches most modern TV and it almost feels like a fucking montage, like something crazy has to happen every 3 minutes.
Yes.
Well, I think the rule on Netflix is every 7 minutes there has to be some kind of climatic moment in order to keep the attention of the viewer. They've done some kind of watch stat on this, right?
That makes sense because I find new television shows like so stressful to watch. Like, I don't know if I need something to happen every 7 minutes.
Mate, like fucking heightened awareness going to bed. Like, it's not exactly the way to fucking get yourself to sleep. God. But White Lotus has kind of gone against the grain where it's like these long played out plots where kind of nothing can happen in one episode, but it's kind of shot nice and there's some character development that makes you ponder and you go, fuck, where's this going?
Well, I'm keen for this because we've swung all the way to 10-second videos on TikTok. Surely content cannot get any shorter. Like it can't. It can't unless we're gonna be like, they'll put a drop of water on your tongue and you'll just like absorb the reel in 1 second or something. So I'm interested to see where it swings back to because we can't get any shorter. Like, so something has to happen. I just think one day, surely everyone will be like, why do we have to watch 500 videos a day? Maybe people will look back at this period of time and be like, what, so you would just watch 500 tiny videos every day? And you'd be like, yeah, dude, that's just how we got around back then, But I think it's horrendous for anxiety as well. Like sometimes when you're just on Instagram for too long, it just makes your brain go like ding, 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 ding. And then you put the phone down. And your brain's still like, where are the dings? Like,
mate, it makes me feel like such a fucking loser.
Oh, massively. I literally have done this now where I just put all my news stuff, because I love Instagram for all the news, but more so sporting news as well. And I get like all my sporting news from Instagram. So I've just put all my sporting news things under favorites and then just go on my favorites feed, because I think the negative thing about Instagram is other people. It's the thing where I'm like, oh, bloody Tommy Little's ranked 16 above me. Look how many people he's got in his show. I'm such a loser. I'll never be top 16. Yeah. You know, or there's this hot chick. I'll never get with her. Or there's this hot chick. I used to get with her. Now she hates me. You know, like, it's just, it's the other people thing. I don't think we're meant to know what other people are up to.
I don't think we are. It's certainly not in our human nature.
I saw this Instagram story today and it literally was so lame it made me put my phone down. And it was this guy I did one comedy gig with years ago, and he had an Instagram story of his Pokemon cards, and he just got them officially graded at like a store. So now he can like sell them properly on eBay. He's like, just got my cards graded, pumped. And I just put my phone down. I was like, what the fuck am I doing with my own time? Like life is precious, and I'm spitting in the face of it by seeing this random bloke whose name I don't even remember has had his Pokemon cards graded.
It really makes you question your time.
Yes, and you know what? Good on him for having them graded. It's embarrassing for me for opening the story. It's embarrassing for me for having to look at something every freaking second of the day. I got what I deserved, I think.
Did you unfollow him?
Nah.
Did you mute him at least?
No, I just put the phone down. I literally was like, that's enough.
I've gotten into a bit of habit of this, right? Because I think there's always... I have this weird thing where, like, sometimes if someone's stuff keeps popping up, and it's no disrespect to them, but maybe I knew them at a time in my life, maybe we had crossed paths, maybe I thought that they were going to play a more significant role because we had one mutual friend, and I thought we'd come into contact a bit more. You know, you give them a follow or you follow them back.
Mate, it's very dramatic you following someone on Instagram.
Yeah,
Seems like there's a lot of ceremony involved
here. You're just
here.
trying to make them feel like they're wanted.
Just throw them a bone,
they're appreciated.
Throw them a bit of light.
And, you get 3 years down the line, you're like, we've never actually had a conversation on from that point. I don't like cats. Why am I looking at a photo of your cats every 100%. Day?
Feel like I can smell it through the phone.
And then I think, I'll unfollow them. And then without a fucking doubt, the next day you're walking out of Woolies, Brad, and you're like, fuck. Do they know?
Yeah.
Are they aware?
Muting is where it's at.
It's really where it's at. It's the greatest hack that Instagram's implemented.
2 things on this. I got a few people where I never followed them on Instagram. I'm the opposite of you, where I never followed them because I thought, who cares? The main character's right here. Let's keep things rolling. But then over the years, we've become good friends. Comedians, maybe they didn't live in Sydney before, or maybe we're just gigging together more or whatever. And now it's like 4 or 5 years and it says follow back. And then you hit follow back and I've had them be like, are you fucking serious? Have you not been following me? We've been good friends for 6 years. But it's almost like when you forget someone's name and it's too late to ask.
Oh, I've had that a couple too many times.
Yeah, it's exactly the same as that. So I've got mates, some of my closest friends I don't follow on Instagram because I left it too long and now I'm stuck.
Well, it's interesting because I think that the greatest, this is my brain kicking in and trying to help you find a solution to this age-old problem, would be to blame it on Mike, the guy who runs your socials.
Oh, wow. I think people know I don't have anyone running my socials. I don't know. I'm getting a vibe that people know that.
Yeah, they might pick up what you're actually putting down as yours. That is fair.
That's unfortunate.
What's the cricketing background? What was your specialty?
I used to open the batting.
Really?
Yep, first out there. I used to bowl leg spin as well till I was about 14. Just because
every opening batter does at some point, right?
Bowl leg spin.
Yeah.
It's just something to do, really. But then I was so bad at bowling that when I started playing grade cricket, oh no, it wasn't like I was bad, but when I started playing grade cricket, I would be bowling in the nets, but I would never bowl in the games because I was bad. And then I was just like, why the fuck am I bowling? Like, I don't get to bowl in the games. And I only bowled 1 over ever in grade cricket, none for 11. But I had a stumping missed. So it's one of those sliding doors moments. The record books say none for 11. But if that stumping gets taken, it could be 1 for 4. Do I get a second over? Now I'm in stand-up comedy. So it's like, fuck.
Do you reckon that, I reckon that wicket keeper a little bit nervous at the moment. Like, if you crack it into the top 16, he's probably going around telling his mates that this is a product of my mishap.
Yeah. Also, there's a chance that if Darcy gets in the top 16 and gets on the gala, he's going to light you up in front of the nation for what you did.
For sure. He's the guy that comes to your gig when you're at the gala.
Yeah.
And the spotlight kind of hits him in the show, and you're like, I can't believe it, but James is here tonight, and, you know, James actually gave me the push in the direction of comedy I needed.
He pushed me out the door of competitive sport with his incompetence.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah, that'd be a nice moment.
Yeah. Let's
Full
hope
circle.
James isn't playing for Australia, or we've got a couple challenging years ahead.
Yeah. No, he's definitely not. He's definitely not. Thank God.
Okay.
I think he's in software. Stupid cunt.
Yeah, likely. What's the on tour? Like, how long are you in a city for?
Oh, pretty short, to be honest. Well, in Melbourne for the comedy festival, I'm there for 2 weeks.
Yep.
And that's actually only a half run, if you can believe that. The Melbourne Comedy Festival, if you do a full run, it's 22 shows across the month.
Wow.
So, like, bands aside, if you are like as big as Tommy Little, that's good. But if it's a lot of tickets to sell the 22 shows. So I'm doing 12 shows, which I still think is actually a shitload of shows.
Bloody oath.
But it's technically a half run. But it is a good opportunity because most other cities, I'll just go and do 1 or 2 shows and leave. Whereas the Melbourne Comedy Festival, you know, you go do your first few shows, and then hopefully if people like it in the crowd, they might tell you their friends, and then you end up selling more tickets through word of mouth. So that can be good. But the Melbourne Comedy Festival is pretty unique like that. There is also the Adelaide and Perth Fringe Festivals where people do extended runs. So you might do like 10 shows in Perth, a week in Adelaide, 3 weeks in Melbourne or whatever. But other than that, I will just go usually for 1 night or 2 or 3 nights. Like, I'm going to Brisbane for 3 nights. But the longer you stay as well, you're just spending more money on accommodation and stuff.
For sure.
Ideally, if you could sell 200 tickets in Brisbane, you'd just want to go and do 1 show to 200 people. Because then you're just there for 1 night, take the money and bail. But depends on the rooms you play and stuff. Like, I'll do 2 shows in Brisbane, and then you can jump on other showcases and stuff as well.
For sure.
So I'm not like out there for weeks at a time, if that's what you're asking.
No, I think it's interesting because any time you do something like you do, it can be perceived as, like, for example, I'm going to the Gold Coast for a podcast, not next week, the week after. I'll literally be there for 4 hours.
Yeah.
Why? Because I can't justify if I spent the night having spent that kind of money to go and record a podcast. Because if anyone hasn't figured out by now, the account's not laying it on that thing.
Yeah.
Right. So.
But and the thing with that stuff is you're just taking money out of your own pocket.
Yeah.
So, like, when I go to Brisbane, I could stay in a 5-star hotel and put up an Instagram story. Hey, guys, look at me, Brisbane, turn up. Billy Darcy's here, going to be a sick show. But the reality is I've just spent $800 of my own money on this sick room for no reason. So I do understand what you mean. So you're doing the fly up, fly back in 1 day.
Yeah, like leave home 3 a.m, get home 1 p.m.
Oh, wow.
A big day.
Yeah, right. Oh, because you're flying from Wollongong.
Flying from Sydney. So I live in sort of Shell Harbour area. So half an hour south of Wollongong. So I'm looking at like 2 hours to the airport from home. Maybe not too bad. Maybe an hour 30.
Yeah.
By the time you get to the
at
airport.
3 a.m.
Yeah, like leave home, get there early enough, first flight out, last flight back in. Believe it or not, Jetstar sometimes has delays, so I'm prepared for that.
Be prepared. One time I was going to Brisbane, and as I got in the Uber to the airport, I got a text from Jetstar saying, your flight is cancelled. And then they go, you can change to another flight, but the only other flights available were for the next day. So then you got refunded in the end. But Jetstar, I think Jetstar are a bit better now, but post-COVID, those first couple of years, it was a joke. It was horrendous. But just out of curiosity, who's the special guest on the Gold Coast? Can you say?
Yeah, I can. I'm going up for Elodie Pullen.
Mitchie Pullen's sister? Or what? No? No, I'm thinking of Chumpy Pullen.
Chumpy Pullen's partner.
Partner?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So,
Jesus, that'll be a sad one.
Yeah, it'll be incredibly deep. Very thoughtful. Looking forward to it going on.
Is it like on death and grief? And
I don't really know what it's on yet. If you can't tell by now, Billy, I don't.
Well, please put some more thought into that one than you did into this one, for Christ's sake. Dear God.
It's
So, Miss Pullen, do you like stand-up comedy? I actually just spoke to Billy Darcy the other week.
Yeah, he's cricketer, believe it or not.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it'll be fun. I'm really looking forward to it. But it's interesting because, you know, I think when you're planning around things like that, I get particularly nervous in the lead up. Not for the episode itself, but all of the potential logistics that go wrong, and you're going there for one thing. Like, yes. I was in Melbourne for a day last year to go down and do a kind of like a story collaboration thing for a mental health organisation that's run by a few mates of mine, and you know, everything went really well for the day. Awesome shoot, got everything we needed, got back to the airport, storms rolling in, Jetstar, believe it or not, cancelled our flight last minute. No more flights out of Melbourne for the night. You know what I realised in that moment? The next 12 hours really taught me about how fragile I've become as a man, because I had to...
What'd you do?
Well, the first thing is, I really miss my missus. Been away for 12 hours.
Oh, mate, I've been single for like 3 years. Get a grip.
Yeah, I know. I was like,
12 hours, you'll be all right.
I can't believe
it's a day trip.
I'm not getting home to it tonight. So that was the first kind of mental hurdle you go through, and then, you've checked in at the airport accommodation.
Do they give you a free night?
No.
No?
No.
Because I was going to say, you get a free night and just enjoy it, you know?
Yeah, not even a free night, so I'll book it in. And then this is where I talk about fragile. You realise that, mate, I've got one pair of undies, I'm now running, I'm sweaty because I've been running around all day. I was literally doing a running shoot. I'm like, I didn't plan for this. Then you don't have your moisturiser and your toothbrush, and you start to think, what have we become?
Yeah.
Skin was flaky the next morning.
Oh, Jesus, dude.
I was fucking really...
I'm going to have to confiscate your tattoos if you keep behaving this way. Come on, brother. How soft can you get?
Mate, I was in the trenches.
You didn't have your moisturiser.
I was in the trenches, so you better believe the backpack's going to be a little heavier going into this Gold Coast trip.
And to think, mate, you didn't think this would be a particularly inspirational episode, and then you've just told us that. That is...
Yeah.
The human spirit knows no bounds. That's what I would say about that story. Hearing you come through that, mate, I think Chumpy Pullen's wife is going to be the one doing a lot of the listening in this episode. If you're going to be dropping emotional yarns like that, brother,
well, I think
you're a warrior.
People have to know that you really want it as bad as you need to breathe.
Yeah.
And
no moisturiser, no worries. Focus.
That's the way that I live my life. So,
mate, speaking of Shell Harbour, I was in Kiama recently, and I heard Kiama is the #1 town in Australia to raise kids. Have you heard this?
I had cousins that grew up there, can attest to it, nice people. Grew up 30 minutes from it always. Kiama's quite a contrasting town because it is teenagers or very, very old people, it seems. That
yes.
There is no in between. So I don't know where all the parents are of these said
okay.
well-raised children. But
yeah, right.
I can't remember seeing a middle-aged person in Kiama for the last 20 years.
Yeah, right.
You're either 16 or 76.
Yeah. I guess they're all probably in the city paying for their house in Kiama.
Yeah.
Fucking
this
nightmare.
This is true. Nice part of the world. Did you enjoy it?
Incredible part of the world. I love Kiama. I've been down there a few times. And once you get past Kiama, between when you go Kiama, Gerringong, that area, where it's farm to beach, and there's the horses on the headland. Incredible drive.
Yeah.
Incredible. But I went down to Berry recently. I actually had an incident in Berry. Now that we're on the topic.
Berry.
So I've never had this before, but I actually walked a whole table of people out of the show. They got up and left. And I'm not really an offensive comedian, so I wasn't really expecting it. But it was an outdoor gig in Berry. And whenever you leave the city, the crowds are just so old. Actually, to your point, there's no 22-year-olds in these country towns. They're either, like you said, 16 or 84. And 16-year-olds can't get into the pub, so I'm playing to the 84-year-olds. Yeah. And anyway, so I'm doing this bit about going down on women, right? Which, it's kind of filthy, but it's not offensive or whatever.
Didn't really happen in 1945, and that's potentially your
problem. Yeah, exactly. Putting your missus' interests above your own. Blokes are furious. But anyway, so I do the bit, and then these guys are talking. And these older blokes at this table, and they're talking pretty loudly, and it's rude to talk through the show. Yeah. I go, what's going on over here, lads? Is your crypto going crazy or something? Very harmless. And this old guy's like, yeah, mate, you're all over the crypto at this table. And I said, well, this is where I went wrong. I said, well, maybe if you went down on your woman a bit more, you wouldn't care so much about crypto. And he goes, his mate goes, smashes his fist down and goes, that's it. You crossed the line. And I'm like, what? And he's like, you crossed the line, mate. Not good enough. And I'm like, all right, mate, calm down. Like, you seem a little bit too angry for what I said. Like, it's not even... Do you know what I mean? You guys are talking through me. Don't shoot the messenger. And he goes, nah, I'm sick of that, mate. Not good enough. He's like furious, this guy. And then I go, all right, mate, look, if you think you're the first old bloke to have a go at me, then take a fucking ticket, cunt, because I'm not interested. And then him and his missus get up and leave, storm out. The whole crowd's like, yeah, fuck off or whatever. And then I try, but even though like I technically quote unquote won or whatever, or the crowd's on my side, it makes you look like a fuckwit for the rest of the set. And it's hard to jump back into material because, you know, my next bit might be like, oh, I'm actually kind of an anxious guy, or I was nervous in this situation. Everyone's like, what? You don't seem nervous at all. You just threatened that bloke in front of everyone. So even though the whole thing was a nightmare, and then a minute into my next bit, the other two people from that table, they got up and left. So it was like so disruptive. And what happened was the guy, apparently, he went up to the guy running the gig and he was like furious. And he said it was advertised as a family-friendly show. And the promoter was like, no, it wasn't. Where'd you read that? And the guy was like, I read it somewhere. And he was just completely mistaken. For some reason, he thought he was seeing the Wiggles or some shit. And I'm not even an offensive or traditionally a filthy comedian. But sometimes I just need to tell everyone to go down on their women.
Mate, I think that you're doing a service to humanity. And in fact,
Mate,
I think...
any orgasms that happened that night in Berry, I want a bit of commission, I think.
Let me tell you, there's some life back in that city after your gig.
Yeah.
There's...
The local saloon is hopping again.
Yeah.
It's all happening.
There'll be a few extras at the dawn service this year. That's
Oh, wow.
for sure. You've extended a few lifespans.
Yeah.
In Berry.
Shout out.
Mate, I'm impressed. And I think potentially the issue there, cochlear implants.
Okay. Maybe it was sort of a mixed message or something.
That also, they have terrible cell service. I've made the mistake of a couple times trying to escape Wollongong in order to do some deep work, and Berry's been the thing I've selected on my day's agenda. You know, the donut van there.
Yeah.
It's
a nice town, Berry.
Bit of peace and serenity, and actually the perfect place to detach from the usual dopamine-filled day of doom scrolling to do some deep work.
When you say deep work, what are you, punching a tree or something? What are you...
Spiritually, yeah.
Yeah,
Spiritually, right. Yeah. You know, when you got really something, you got a deadline or something, you got to get it done, right? And
right, okay.
You know, you head down there and then you realise the reason that nobody does deep work in Berry is in fact because you can't get service or reception for anything.
Oh, right.
So actually your day of deep work is just you driving to Berry and driving home frustrated. And I think potentially that's
some of the shallowest work I've ever seen.
Yeah.
That is not deep work, brother.
It's really shallow. And so maybe I guess the message lost in translation is a matter of fact that the cell service isn't really good.
Potentially.
Do you think you go back to Berry after that? Do you try and redeem yourself?
It's still pretty fresh.
Yeah.
It's about 6 weeks ago. It was funny as well because before the show, I was getting a beer at the bar and a couple of blokes came up to me. They said, Bill, big fan, really looking forward to the show. And I just thought about them on the way back being like, oh, those guys must think I'm such a weirdo. Like, first time they've seen me do stand-up and I'm like threatening this old guy.
Yeah.
But old people and me, I just don't even know. Like, I'm 30, but doing stand-up in your 20s, sometimes these old crowds can just be tough.
What do you think that is?
Oh, it's just a generational thing. I'm sure that a 60-year-old comedian would be like, what's with these 25-year-olds?
Yeah, but it's kind of weird, isn't it? Because I feel if, you know, you and I rock up at a travelling Wilburys gig and go, not exactly our style of music, well, no fucking shit, Sherlock, they're all 75.
Yeah, but I think it's more comedy specific. I'm not sure. It might be Billy Darcy specific as well. I might be just projecting my experience onto the whole industry. But yeah, there's a bit of a gap.
What do you reckon is the hardest audience to play in front of? Like, is there an audience that you get a little bit of nervousness heading into a show there because you think that, I know you said you're not typically offensive. No,
and I'm not. Probably old people. Like, just sometimes the crowd is so old that They just don't, like, I'm just not the comedian for them.
Which is challenging because I feel like comedians in Australia played a lot of RSLs.
Dude, we do play a lot of RSLs, and a lot of the gigs I do are at RSLs in regional towns, and I'm happy for the work, and I'll continue to do it. The shows are a lot of fun, and sometimes old crowds are awesome as well. Like, we did this one in Foster where I was hosting, and like there was a guy in the front row. He was dead. Like, I couldn't believe how old this bloke was, but they was such a fun crowd. And I think as well, it's usually if you're hosting the show, you got to go out and start and like warm the crowd up, and that's the hardest spot. If you're hosting to these older crowds, it can be tough, but you know, not everyone's for everyone as well, and I'm getting better at accepting that as I get older. Like, sometimes if you do, like, when you're only a few years into stand-up, you're thinking, oh God, they didn't like these jokes suck. But sometimes, as now I'm like 10 years in, if I do jokes that have worked like every night for 3 years and the crowd's like, nah, then it's like, oh well. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I get what you mean. At some point in your life, I think it's actually as you get closer to 30, I've heard this concept played out. There's a different couple tiers of what they call fuck you mentality.
Oh,
One
wow.
of them is like,
load
fuck
me
you
up.
money. So
fuck
like,
you, buddy, yep.
If you've got enough money, it's like Conor McGregor. The guy's fucking diabolical.
Yeah,
He's punching old people left, right and centre. He's actually taking it a level further than you are in terms of insulting old people. He's physically harming them.
Yes, I would agree that Conor McGregor is a worse person than me. Thank you for clarifying that.
I just wanted people to know in case they were sitting there going,
this guy's a real
on
Conor
the scale
McGregor.
of worst people, Bill's 17, Conor McGregor 16.
Yeah.
There's fuck you money. There's fuck you freedom. Like if you're disconnected, if you're off the grid, you're on a farm.
Oh, okay.
It's kind of like what's happening in the city and the chaos of, the current economical and political climate. If you're relatively well set up on the farm and you're kind of disconnected from society, there's a little less stress.
Yeah.
The farm goers during COVID.
Okay, I don't have either of these fuck yous so far. Tell me there's another fuck you.
There's another one that's potentially in your control, but maybe not so much yet. They call it fuck you family, right? And,
oh, wow. What's that one?
Fuck you family is essentially, dads tend to speak about this. At least this is what they say in this thread of communication I was listening to, that when you bring children into the world, you all of a sudden find yourself more comfortable in a pair of ugly white New Balance sneakers accompanied by skinny leg jeans and some kind of daggy shirt, because going and outwardly impressing people in society isn't of that much importance to you anymore, but rather coming home and your kids thinking you're a good dad and your wife thinking you're a good person is the top of your priority list. And so you get kind of a release of vanity and need for validation. But I just think there's also a natural order that comes with it as you get closer to 30. 20 is like that decade. It's kind of a prickly decade where you're trying to figure out what your place in the world is.
Yes. Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
So I feel like you're going to come into even greater wisdom and comfort in your stand-up. Yeah,
I guess so. I think as well, you just get more comfortable or confident with what you like. And there is some stuff that I think is funny that I like. Other people are not going to like.
Oh, give me an example of that, like your taste in humour.
I'm trying to think of a bit in this year's show that might be of that ilk. I don't know. Like, it's not really necessarily like a taste. Like, I'm not like that dark or anything, but there are just certain bits like that I find funny, but are just, they're not bits that like destroy with the whole crowd. Like this is an example of just a really silly line that doesn't get a laugh with everyone, but I like it, so I keep it in the show.
Okay.
So you got the tough stickers on. So there's like cops with sleeves now, tattoo sleeves. And I got a bit about this, and it's this whole bit, but basically there's this one line that is sort of 50-50 with the crowd, but I like it, and so I'm comfortable keeping it in the show. And it's where, like, because they've relaxed the dress standards for police officers because they're not getting enough applications. And so I have this joke where I'm just ragging on short guys, basically. And it's a bit 50-50 where I go, so they're not getting enough applications for police officers, which I can't wrap my head around because I walk around the streets and I still see short blokes everywhere. So, like, what, are they doing something else now? Like, is crypto going crazy? What are these little fellas up to? And sometimes crowds are like, oh, come on, mate. But I'm like, oh, whatever. And then I'm like, oh, it kind of makes sense because if a 5'4" bloke had a tail, it would be curly. And that, some people are just like, that is, I don't, whatever. Like, because they weren't even into the last bit, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm kind of losing people as I go through that one with each line. But I find it funny. And it's kind of slack, but whatever. I find it funny.
It's funny. It is funny. And I think that, as you said before, comedy is one of those things that is subjective. So you don't get everyone. But I think that maybe, you know, it's probably, people talk about woke culture, all that stuff, right? Whether you really buy into that or not, I think we're sort of past that a little bit.
I think so.
You know, conversation in society, but...
People just use the word woke, like, ad hoc these days.
They do.
They're just, you don't agree with me? You get out of here, you woke piece of shit. That's woke.
Arm and flat white. Woke.
Woke, yeah. It's like empathy's woke at this point. It's like, oh, God.
Yeah. But I find it interesting that there's some comedians who are, like, great example. I seen a joke pop up online recently that I thought was very funny, that I thought was delivered so well, and I was so surprised that the response was so positive because I thought, oh, for some people, I could see them going, oh, no, that's too far. So I don't know if I'll say his last name right, but Anthony Jeselnik.
Yeah. Right? So he's like super dark, super well written.
So I don't know if you've seen his joke where he's like, I'm recently at a bar having a beer and I see my favourite porn star. She's sitting at the bar by herself. And I'm like, oh my God, you know, this is insane. She's by herself. And he said, bartender comes over and he goes, oh, can I help you, mate? And he goes, yeah, just one more beer. And he goes, by the way, see that girl over there? She's 13. And I'm like, that's fucking dark.
Yeah.
Right? I'm like, that is so dark. But I'm like, brilliant. I found it hilarious. Everybody in the comments seemed to find it hilarious. And I'm like, has he just hit the algorithm at a point in which everyone was so receptive to that? Because I can't imagine everyone that sees that online is happy.
But it's well written, though. And I'm literally just going to steal something that Anthony Jeselnik said himself.
Okay.
Because he was talking about this, how Tony Hinchcliffe, the comedian, did the Trump rally. Yes. And Tony Hinchcliffe said there's a massive floating pile of garbage off the coast of America. It's called Puerto Rico. And everyone was blown up at that. And you could say that Jeselnik's joke is way worse. He's insinuating that he watches child pornography.
Yeah, it's
way worse. But the difference is, I would say, is that Anthony Jeselnik's joke was just written better. You didn't expect it coming. Whereas, like, Tony Hinchcliffe is, like, 3 racist jokes in already. And he's like, it's just so obvious and hack. It's just like, ugh, you know what I mean? And Jeselnik was talking about Tony Hinchcliffe on a podcast. And he said, like, offensive comedy or, like, good art is about getting away with it. So, like, these comedians that are blowing up because, like, everyone hates their dark humor or whatever, it's like, well, how's your writing, brother? Because you probably suck at it. If everyone's furious, then you have not got away with it. Like, you can write, you can talk about whatever you want. Like, these comedians are like, you can't punch down, you can't do this, you can't do that. You can do whatever you want if you do it well. But, like, so, like, getting away with it is the key. And, like, Jeselnik's such a good writer that he will talk about the darkest shit and people are fine with it. But Jeselnik, he's such a good writer, but there's heaps of people who go, that style of comedy is not for me. I think that's fine too. And I think when I'm performing to these, like, 60-year-olds, if I'm working on material for, like, my crowd in the clubs and, like, you know, sometimes the crowds will, you know, might not be my demographic, or maybe they just didn't like that one or whatever. And I think as I get older, I'm more comfortable just being like, yeah, but I like that. That's what I'm into.
Yeah. And
so you sort of got to draw your line. But I don't get on the fucking news the next day saying everyone in Newtown's woke, they hate me, they don't know comedy.
Yeah.
You're allowed to not like stuff.
It's interesting because essentially, correct me if I'm wrong here, but for the people listening, Billy Darcy saying that racism is just a writing problem. I'm kidding, of course.
I would say if people think you're racist, you have a writing problem.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say racism is a writing problem, but it can become one.
Yeah. Oh, very, very funny. But it's a good point you make. I look at, I don't know whether you like him or not, but Ricky Gervais is someone I've always found quite funny.
Yeah, for sure.
But one of those guys that typically toes the line of more offensive humour in a lot of people's eyes. His special on Netflix, I think it was Humanity, may have been probably my favourite stand-up.
Yeah, he's really good. Yeah, he's great.
I love Kevin Hart. Like in stand-up, I find him in the stand-up format
very
good.
He's like the biggest on the planet, probably, I think.
Crazy.
Yeah, he's
Mate,
huge.
did you watch his doco? I can't remember what it was called, but it
On
was
Netflix?
Yeah.
I thought that was quite harrowing, actually.
Mate, wild, right?
Like, there was this one thing. It's clear that he's just a workaholic.
Oh,
times
madness.
a million. And there was this one scene where he's like on a conference call. They're like, we just closed the HBO deal. And like one of his kids is like taking its first steps behind him. And he's like on this conference call, you know, he doesn't seem like, so yeah, he seems like a pretty full on guy.
It's interesting, isn't it? Like in this space, I was talking to, who was it during the week? I was talking to Gemma Spegg, the host of the Psychology of Your 20s.
Oh, cool. What's that? I would love that.
Really successful podcast. Like Gemma is an Aussie girl who has a psychology background and started recording a podcast more so as a audio journal for what she was experiencing in her own life in the back of her Subaru, so she could get a moment of quiet living with other people. That literally overnight she put out an episode on loneliness, like maybe episode 11 of a show, and it took off to the point where she's got like millions of listeners, predominantly in the US, a really heavy US audience, but of course a lot of Australians who get around a show. It's just bigger market share over there, and she signed with a network in the US. And we're talking about how when you're a youngish person, Gemma's like 25, right? And you know, you start to have a little bit of success at your thing that's quite creative and quite uncertain, and you feel a little bit of the imposter syndrome that comes with that, because you're like, far out, like, am I lucky, or is this just, I know I work hard, but starting to get some, you know, opportunity in my space. You can have this feeling, not everyone does, but you can, where every opportunity that comes by you, you feel like you have to grab. You can't say no to anything. You can't zone out for a minute, because it's like, it's my moment, and if I miss it, I might miss it forever. I heard Jack Steele from Inspired Unemployed talk about this on a podcast as well. The anxiety.
He said that?
Yeah, he was just like the anxiety of like not being
dance
able to
on the wrong
stop.
building site or something. What's that bloke carrying on about? He's a fucking millionaire.
Yeah.
What did he miss? This is crazy.
But you know, it's like the next opportunity. If you don't take it, do you ever get it again?
The next TikTok trend. He'll be fine, Jack Steele.
Yeah.
My God. But I've met Jack. He's a good bloke. But so what do you? Yeah, I get what you mean. I don't know if I feel like that with the opportunities, but I more feel like definitely in years gone past, I've felt like this has to be the year. If it doesn't go this year, I don't know what's going to happen. But it's like, this has to be the year. And it's like, kind of, if it doesn't happen now in this specific way, it'll never happen.
Have you ever been close to calling time on your full-time effort to make comedy a thing?
Yeah, once. But it was mostly because of COVID, because that was just a nightmare. But because when 2020, I was 25, so I was 5 years into stand-up. And it's not like you should be a millionaire at that point or anything. But all the comedians that were successful, they're carrying on like, oh no, like my career is on hold and like can't work or whatever. But I didn't even like have a career to go back to. So the 2 years of COVID, I was thinking, I didn't even have a career, you know, like it wasn't going that well before COVID, and now it's going even worse during COVID. And then for some reason, turning 27 just rattled me heaps. I was about to turn 27.
What do you think that is?
I don't know. Maybe it's like the start of your late 20s. It's so funny now that I'm 30 to say that I was rattled by turning 27. I was probably more rattled by 27 than 30.
Yeah, interesting.
I don't even know. That's just how silly things can be. But I was just thinking I've like fucked up my whole life because I spent 7 years pursuing stand-up, or 5, and then 2 years just milling around. And yeah, like what am I going to do? But I think things are more transient than that. I
agree.
Just getting better at... The only certainty is uncertainty.
Yeah, getting better at riding the wave.
Riding the wave, yeah, other sayings. But I think definitely coming up to my 30th birthday, I was like... I think this is a bit of like cost of living, housing prices, bullshit as well. Because like I love Sydney. I love living in Surrey Hills. Like I'm from the Northern Beaches. Like I've never lived in the eastern suburbs, but I'd love to. I love this city. I don't want to move to the Central Coast or, you know, I don't want to move where it's more affordable or whatever. But so you can't, as you're getting older, you're kind of thinking like, man, this stand-up thing, I need this to go now, and it has to go like this way, you know, like. But now I think I'm just a bit better with the uncertainty because I think the grass is always greener. I think this idea that no one else has any uncertainty in their life is so silly. Everyone's got so much uncertainty. And even if I was talking to my roommate, Rowan, about this, where it's so stressful touring because like you want people to come and stuff. I was thinking, do you reckon it'd be stressful if you had like 3 theaters sold out like 4 weeks in advance? And then we were saying yes, because you'd be like, oh my God, how do I keep this now?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So I think, yeah, riding the wave. And I think this idea, I always thought like something would happen, my career would be one way and then it would be another. You know, like I'd go on the footy show in 1994 and just change my life. But my experience is just like a lot of little things that sort of just nudge you up.
I think it's very true. And I think, have you ever heard of the hockey puck theory?
I have not.
It's
I'm loving these
essentially
theories though.
If you look at the shape of a hockey puck, it's like most people spend, close to 10 years of their life in this zone that feels like you're gaining very little traction, if any at all. And, it's a relatively straight line. And all of a sudden, as a result of the experience, the lessons, it's almost like pulling back a slingshot, right? Like you're gaining all of this momentum and then all of a sudden you hit this point where the right opportunity is presented to you and you're not just at a point in which you want it, but you're at a point in which you're ready to capitalize on it.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a convenient belief that I've held because it hasn't quite happened for me yet. But
yeah.
I certainly like the idea of it.
Yeah. No, that's cool. Also, this is just specific to my stand-up, but in my experience, looking back, I always thought I was better than I was. So when I was like 27 being like, what the hell? Like COVID, I'm not doing any stand-up. Nothing's really happening for me. And then didn't quit, came back from COVID, and then was back into the stand-up. And it's like, why don't I have more opportunities or whatever? But then when I was 29, I look back at 27, I go, you weren't as good as you thought you were. And I think you're never as bad as you think you are, but you're never as good as you think. The truth is somewhere in between. So, even before COVID, when, some guy gets this thing ahead of you, you're like, what the hell? But yeah, in my experience, I've never been as good as I thought I was at the time. So that's okay. I find looking back, things make a bit more sense.
Do you think that, I've heard the rhetoric, I guess, from artists, be it musicians, comedians, who are creating new content, new art all the time, that when you go through periods of just performing, it can be really hard to come up with any ideas to write new stuff because you're kind of living the same experience over and over again. You're on stage, you perform the same hour, maybe you make a few tweaks the next night, but you're not really out like having experiences, going on a date and it kind of fucks up and it gives you a bit or...
Yes. No, massively. Yeah, 100%. And you just end up doing stand-up comedy. Like I have a podcast and sometimes I'll tell stories from the weekend. But the podcast was almost cooler when my stand-up career was worse because when you first start out, I wasn't getting booked at the good clubs on the weekend. So I'm just out with my mates. It's better for stories. Or I was getting booked at gigs that sucked so bad or were so chaotic and bizarre that they made good stories in and of themselves. Whereas now, sometimes I'll be setting up the podcast, be like, what should I talk about from the weekend? And it'll be like, Friday you did a comedy gig that was good, and then Saturday you did a comedy gig, or you did 2 that were good. And it's like, well, that's good, but there's not a lot of life experience in there, not a lot of stories worth telling. So 100%, yeah. And it's actually a bit of a bucket list item for me to try and date a bit more this year because I got a bit lazy with dating last year.
What does that look like?
Dating?
No, I know what it looks like. I'm about to get married in August. So,
yeah.
Not to rub it in, but, what is your game plan, the plan of attack to date more in 2025 look like?
Oh, right. Oh, just make more of an effort, I think. And also, just make more of an effort. I reckon, over Christmas, I actually got 5 minutes out of the December, January period because I was going on more dates. And you have a couple that go tits up or whatever. Or not even go tits up, but you just meet different people. You just meet radical people and stuff. No plan of attack.
What does tits up actually mean in a dating sense? That could be perceived in so many ways. Yeah.
Probably you rooted, but there was no second date.
Okay.
I don't know. But I've just said that on the fly. That could just be wrong as well. But I just think with the dating, it's more so because stand-up's at night, and I like doing the stand-up as well. Like I don't do it begrudgingly. So I would actually love to just do stand-up every night and not date. That's why I have to like make more of an effort to.
So you're not a morning date person?
Nah, not really.
You got to try that 10 a.m. slot. That's the thing that
don't people have work
with. On a Saturday, Sunday, mate? You got to Saturday morning walk. I commented. I was
a walking date guy during COVID.
Everyone was a walking date person during COVID. It's funny, I actually commented on Sam Morrell was on Chris Williamson's podcast, and they were talking about like great first date experiences. And I actually want to read this to you because it was very funny. And they were just talking about like what is the ideal first date? Like is it, you go out for dinner and, Chris, the host, he mentions that it's like, I've actually heard somewhere that, it's a great first date if you go on a walk. Yep.
I'm in for the walking date because it's not like intense eye contact either.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing is, this this thread of conversation, it's like the idea of a walk is you're side by side, and so you're moving forward together. And I certainly didn't look at it with this kind of
so they're going deep
strategy. Like there's a story behind my first date with my soon-to-be wife, Soph. Saw a photo of her on Instagram amongst sort of mutual people, and I knew, I was like, oh, she's gorgeous. Sent her a message, organised a catch up the next week to go on a date and go for a walk and a coffee. And it was a beautiful sunny day, nice time of the year, right? Closing in, I think it was the 12th of November.
Oh wow!
Right, so I remember all these things, mate. I'm a romantic guy.
Yeah, shout out.
And I went for this walk with her, and before you're thinking, fuck, you mentioned the tough stickers. And you're like, oh, what do I wear to make myself look the best? I'm going on a walk, so it's got to be active wear, right? You're not rocking up in jeans, so you kind of got the active wear on, but you go, is a singlet too much, or do I go with a t-shirt? And weirdly, I went with a singlet, right?
Yep.
I'm like, I don't know, I'm looking a bit tan at the moment. Like I felt pretty fit at the time. I'll go with the singlet, and then you're second guessing. I didn't even put my sunnies on my nose because I didn't want them to mark the bridge of my nose. I knew that I was punching so far above my weight that I had to think about how I rocked up and looked.
Yep.
Right? For her, she probably just rolled out of bed and looked beautiful.
Yep.
So like the odds were against me. So anyway, we go on this walking date and they're talking about this, and Sam's laughing about how he thinks, at least in New York where he's from, a walk date is a great way to tell a girl that you're homeless. I've got nowhere to take you. I can't afford to take you anywhere.
Yep.
Let's go for a walk. So I just comment, I went for a walk and coffee date that lasted nearly 5 hours. Stopped walking after 2. We're getting married next year. The best comment is this guy goes, and the comment went mad. Like people loved it, right? It's kind of a self-help development post. Some guy comments, bro, prove that being cheap doesn't matter if you both want it.
Yeah.
Like, is that a backhanded compliment?
No, that's great, dude. I guess the coffee date is good because it's like an $8 date.
It is.
Yeah.
It really is. $8 date for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
That's the way that I'd pitch it if I was the marketing team.
Yeah, I was buying a girl dry gin martinis the other week, and I fucking wish she was drinking coffee, brother. They were like $33 each. I couldn't. They were like one sip.
It's funny because they say girls like a funny guy. Have you found that to be true?
Yeah, I would say so, mate. If girls didn't like funny guys, I wouldn't have a single root to my name. You know what I mean? I'm one of the great 6 out of 10s. Like,
you know what I like about you? You know your strengths.
I know my strengths, okay. Yeah. You know what I like about you? You say something really cutting every 10 minutes.
I have to say, so it's interesting, right? Like when because at the time I was a full-time podcaster, right? Which when the girl goes
probably
home,
even weirder than stand-up.
It is. It's like when the girl goes home and tells her parents that she's met a full-time podcaster.
Yeah. Freak
you
alert.
know that they're starting to sweat.
You're going to get cut up and put in different national parks, babe. You're going to be the podcast.
They're starting to stress, for how many decades is my daughter not going to have any kind of financial security? Thankfully, Soph's parents are the most beautiful people. I love them dearly. But I wonder for you, like when you're telling a girl that you're a stand-up comedian, what's that conversation like?
I don't know. Well, what else am I going to tell them?
But it's like...
Are you saying, like, should I not tell them? Or
no, I think it's great.
Well, it's a conversation starter, but...
Yeah. Do they then expect you to be funny on the spot? Like, do you heighten your expectation for delivering on the date? I guess that's what I'm getting at.
Oh, no. God, no. Who cares? No, absolutely not.
Nah. So you're just approaching it with the same energy that you are a show in Berry. If this goes tits up...
Yeah. Tits in all directions.
Yeah.
No, but I would say I would have thought of myself as a funny person before I started stand-up comedy.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'll just try to be myself. If anything, sometimes on first dates, I'm a little bit like... do you ever like take 15% off your personality so you don't freak someone out?
No, I'm terrible at that.
Okay, well,
Thank God
sometimes
Sophie's
I'm very extroverted and chatty, and sometimes I just think I come off a little weird. But so sometimes I'll take like 15% off my personality, and I think that's actually way lamer. You should just be yourself and just see if they like it or not.
Yeah, so
Sometimes I'm rocking up as Billy Darcy on the third date, and I've been just trying to get to the third date for the first two by not being too weird.
You know what you should do to really lean into it? Just had an idea for you. This could change your life.
Oh, wow.
So I want you to really absorb this, right?
Okay, hit me.
You invite a girl on a date, right? You say, hey, Perth, this club, we're going to watch some comedy, right? She rocks up. There's a drink waiting for her, a seat right at the front. She goes, fuck, this bloke must be late. Bill said he was pretty punctual. Where is he?
Oh, okay.
You walk out behind the
Dear
curtain.
Lord.
Own it, brother. Lean in.
Doug Stanhope has a famous story about that where
Really?
he was at a gig and he met a girl at the bar, and then there was a separate showroom. And she was like, oh, I'm here to see this show. And he was like, yeah, me too. And then he sat with her in the crowd, and they were getting along so well before the show and then watching the show. And then they called his name. He went up. He absolutely destroyed. And then he got back down, sat back down and said nothing. And he said it was just the best a date has ever gone.
That's impressive.
Yeah. But it's high risk, high reward. I used to actually, just for first dates, sometimes say to girls, like, oh, I'm doing the show. If you want to come past and we can have a drink after. Because my schedule, I'm always working at night. Yeah. But another comedian told me that's actually quite selfish. So I stopped doing that. But anyway. The thing with the comedy date is, and I may do it again actually now that I'm talking about it, the thing with the comedy date is it is high risk, high reward. Because if you bring a girl to the show and you do well, you look like a legend, right? But if you bring a girl to the show and you bomb, then you look like way more of a loser than if you had just taken her to a normal place in the first place. So big players take big swings.
Well, yeah, it's a good point. And I would say that, the best relationships start on a really strong note. So I think you've just got to lean in, brother. I want to see a little bit of that from Billy Darcy in 2025.
Me too.
Do you want to get married? Kids? All that stuff?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah?
Absolutely.
Where do you see yourself settling into life? Is it Manly? Is it Surrey Hills?
Oh, you mean like where would I like to live?
Yeah, when you got a couple kids. Let's say like stand-up career pans out beautifully.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely cranking.
Arenas
are selling out.
Big time.
Tom Segura can't get a spot in town because Billy Darcy's on Saturday night.
Yep. Married to that Frooms chick off Instagram.
She was just on Mark's pod.
Oh, really? Yeah. That's probably why she was in my head. She was. Yeah. I saw her on Spotify this morning. I was thinking, that was a niche reference. But yeah, so I'm married to Frooms in this example. To be honest, mate, I just love Sydney. I've never lived in the eastern suburbs, but I could. I think it's beautiful over there. Inner West, Surrey Hills.
Can I ask what you like about it?
What do I like about it? It's a good question. Well, I was born here, and I like all the different areas of Sydney. I lived in the Northern Beaches for years, and then moved close to the beach for a couple of years. Then I moved to the city. I like all the different areas. Like you have the inner west, like Newtown, Marrickville. Then you have the eastern suburbs, where there's like Maroubra, Bronte. Then you got like Bondi and Coogee, where all the Irish are, and a bit more fancy. Then you've got the city like Surrey Hills, Darlinghurst, where we are. Then you got Western Sydney. Then the Blue Mountains, Newcastle. Like I love it all. I think it's just a great spot.
It is pretty diverse, isn't it?
It is. There's a lot happening, and for stand-up comedy, I'd probably want to live in Sydney or Melbourne. I think Melbourne's great as well. But yeah, Sydney, I do have a bit of an affinity with this city. I really like it here. And I think people trash Sydney too much. So I almost rep it out of a reaction. Well, when people are like, my mate was telling me this chick he knew put up a Instagram story. She's like 24, great girl. But she goes, hit me with travel recommendations. Just need to get out of Sydney ASAP. So sick of it here. I think this is a big thing that people are like, ugh, Sydney, you know how it is, expensive, yeah, rah, rah, rah. It's like, it's also the sickest city ever. It's incredible here.
Yeah, it is a good city, isn't it? It's funny, I was talking about this before with my recent guest on the pod this morning, Andrea Clark, and she, moved up to be closer to family, or her sister in particular, who was going through a bit of a prickly health situation for a year in Kira, in the Gold Coast. Mm-hmm. She was like, it was so beautiful, but she said, by the end of it, was longing to get back to Sydney.
Yeah.
And she's a Manly girl as well, and so she was saying something about this part of the world that just makes me feel home.
The beaches are incredible. My friend Adam lives across the road from, or like a 5-minute walk from Freshwater Beach, like the one over from Manly. And I've been all over the world. I don't think I've come to a beach better than Freshwater Beach. Also, when I lived in England when I was 19 to play a season of cricket, and I did
county cricket.
No, a couple of levels below county, but I did miss it. I did miss Australia, and I had a 2-year visa. I could have stayed for longer. Well, I had to come back to play cricket in Australia, but when they said, are you gutted to be leaving? Like my mates in England in the team, and I was like, not really. Like I did miss Sydney. Like I love it here.
Where do you think is the funniest place in the world?
The funniest?
Like who breeds the funniest people? By not stand-up comedian sort of fame, but rather by the average. Like if we were to rate every country by the least funny person on an average in the rankings, I guess who would be number 1 and who'd be 17?
I think last would be Nordic people.
Not very funny?
I don't think so. Like Norwegians and stuff. Can't see it.
Do you think that's just like an impending trauma of, you never know when the Vikings are going to raid your city?
Potentially.
Yeah.
I actually think Americans are horribly unfunny. I think they're so weird. Because Americans don't understand sarcasm.
They don't.
They don't get sarcasm at all, and yet they claim to be funny. It's like, what the hell? And they don't get like self-deprecation in America.
Which we and the Brits do.
Yeah, and like when I lived in England, I just felt there was just very little, what's the word I'm looking for? Culture change or anything. It was very easy to fit in England. Whereas when I was in America, I was like, these people are weird. Like, and Americans are just weird because they don't travel that much either. So like half the people in America couldn't even understand me. I would have to talk really slowly in America. And
whereabouts in America?
All over. I did like a road trip through the South.
Oh, nice. And were you just popping up at clubs?
I did a few gigs in Austin, but it was with 3 other mates who aren't comedians. It was like not a comedy trip. But then one of my mates had lived in Austin before, so he teed me up a few gigs when I was in Austin. So that was cool.
From an outsider's perspective, is Austin kind of the place that it's happening right now to break in?
Yes. Austin is kind of like, it used to be New York and LA, and it is still New York and LA, but now it's New York, LA, and Austin. But Austin is kind of wretched. Like, don't believe everything Joe Rogan says. Like, that street his comedy club is on, some of the scariest homeless people I've ever seen in my life. Like, the homeless issue in Austin is absolutely terrifying. And, like, the mentally ill, the drug-riddled, like, they have so many issues in that city. It's crazy. And most of the big comedians, they only went there because they pay way less tax. So that's sort of like created this arts hub. But it's not like this Mecca or whatever. Like, it's kind of dodgy, Austin. And it's like 47 degrees every day.
If you had to live in America somewhere, like I know you said you'd probably prefer to be in London, but where would you live?
I would probably live in LA, I think.
Really?
I've actually never been to New York, so I wouldn't be able to comment.
I love New York. I found LA challenging.
I just think the vibe in LA is that like everyone's broke and try to be famous, so I kind of relate to that. And every day is like 29 degrees on the nose, drinking an ice long black, legal weed. I love it.
Yeah. Hey, let me ask you, speaking of Australia and Australian culture, Robert Irwin, you've kind of got like a bit of an online love affair with Robert. Yeah,
a little bit. Yeah, I'm just fascinated with this kid.
What? Talk to me about that. What's the story behind that?
So it all just comes from, I had this joke in my show last year, and it was about, I don't want Mary Fowler dating Nathan Cleary. I want her to date Robert Irwin, just because he's so squeaky clean. But Robert Irwin just fascinates me because he's like such an industry plant. Like this kid, like it's so weird. It's like he never blinks. Like he's absolutely perfect. He's always smiling. He's like so clouded out with the corporations. He's like doing Google Pixel ads, making up pineapple juice mocktails and shit. And he talks so weird. I think it should be illegal to media train children.
Have you seen his latest like shirtless campaign?
Yeah,
mate,
dude.
The bloke's shredded.
He's jacked out of his mind. But it's like his whole life is run by a publicist or something. It's so bizarre to me. And it's like this conspiracy in Australia. Everyone's like, yeah, everyone loves Robert Irwin, right? Oh, yeah, love him. Yeah, he's awesome. But it's like, no one knows why. But he's just like this weird kid. Imagine, I think it's so funny. Imagine you're like some 41-year-old, like former Married at First Sight contestant. And you're on I'm a Celeb, Get Me Out of Here. And you're eating cockroaches in a bathtub or whatever they do. And you got this 22-year-old kid going, keep going, buddy. You're almost there. Like, it'd be so demeaning, dude. It's so funny. And it's like, oh, yeah, of course, Robert Irwin would host I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. It's like, what is Robert Irwin's skill? He's just like this like 19-year-old like television host that we've just decided we owe a career to. I just find his place in Australian, the Australian media zeitgeist to be fucking bizarre.
I quite like Robert from the outside. I'd love to have him on the show because I feel like we don't know enough about him.
But here's the thing, dude. I don't think you ever would. The guy, I think, honestly, he is, if you could peel his face off, I think he's AI.
Have you ever seen him in person?
No.
Yeah,
I bet he's stunning, though. I bet he's even hotter in real life.
Yeah.
His comments are crazy. His comments are just all like 47-year-old chicks just foaming, just barking like dogs.
It's borderline on the Jesselnick joke, isn't it? Really?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just find Robert Irwin to just be like, I'm like you, where I'm like, I can't wait for the Robert Irwin like villain turn. I want to see him smoking a cigarette. I want to see him say something that's not on a teleprompter an inch from his face. I want to hear what he really thinks.
I reckon the PR team's probably got that planned in there somewhere.
I reckon he's got so many PR people around him, he doesn't even know up from down anymore at this point. And I would love it if he like, I'd love it if he did like an Instagram live where he's like, my stupid mum makes me do all this TV. I hate it. I just want to fucking go on a Kentucky tour and try and root some chicks. Like, like we don't know anything about this guy, and we all claim to love him. And if you ask why do you like Robert Irwin, no one knows why.
Have you seen America's answer to Robert Irwin?
No.
Fishing with Garrett. That guy that just walks through the Everglades and goes,
oh my God,
Burmese python. Yoink.
I don't know if Robert Irwin will be doing half the shit that bloke's doing.
Mate, that guy has yoinked a couple of animals in his day.
Some of the stuff that guy does, I think it's all vibe. I think the animals can feel, because he's like got his hand in alligators' mouths and shit. I think the animal can feel that he's just so chilled out. It's like when you're riding a horse and they say, the horse can feel your energy or whatever. I don't know. But that Fishing with Garrett guy, he's walking through the Everglades barefoot, stepping on anacondas and shit.
Yeah, it's actually borderline stupid.
I think it goes as far... I reckon you could honestly go as far to say it's animal cruelty.
He's yoinked a couple too many that at this point I'm like, mate...
Stop touching the animals.
You're just the fucking kid at school that grew up 5 years before everyone else, and at this point, they're all helpless. Yeah. And you're just picking blokes out of the lineup left, right, and centre.
Yeah,
and
it's
doing
weird.
As you will.
But did you see that chick that picked up a possum on the side of the road? That American influencer?
I heard about it through the Albo speech that went kind of viral online. Yeah. I had to do some digging because I was at one point very confused at what was happening.
Yeah, she just like took this baby possum away from its mother and was like laughing. And then there was some Aussie bloke like filming her laughing. The whole thing was rancid. You just leave animals alone.
I think so too.
Yeah.
I think so
Controversial.
Too. Is there any animal that you think, in fact, you should come into some kind of regular contact with out in the wild?
You should?
Yeah. Just going against the grain here. Is there any kind of animal that needs to be wrangled on a regular basis?
I would probably say huntsman spiders. Because I live in Surrey Hills, right in the city. I get no clout for, how the amount of nature I come into contact with. As soon as it rains, the house is just filled with huntsmen. They're everywhere. Yeah. So I feel like huntsmen I think they're actually quite vibey huntsmen. They're actually friendly.
You know what's interesting? Talking about not so friendly animals, to pivot here, I seen in Rome, I don't know how old this video was, it certainly wasn't AI, but this vision of a lion walking down the fucking streets of Rome in a neighborhood. Like a lion escaped from the zoo or something. Literally something out of Madagascar walking down the streets.
Yeah, we had that here in Sydney a couple of years ago.
Did we?
Yeah. Something got out.
What was it?
It was a Taronga Zoo. It was like a lion or something.
Really?
100%.
How does that happen?
I got no idea.
Fuck, animal control under some real
I mean, they got it
stress.
pretty quick. But yeah, it did happen.
You'd hope to be the person that, like, seen it in the 10-minute window that they didn't get it.
Yeah. Imagine you freaking wake up and like rip a bong and go to get a coffee and there's a lion on the street. You'd be like, I need a new dealer. This is crazy.
Yeah, you shit out of luck. That's when you're really hoping that Robert Irwin is exactly who
Yeah,
he
exactly.
tells you
I'll
he
definitely
is.
change my tune where it's me and a lion. I'll be like, Robert, help.
He's going, calm down, buddy. Calm down.
Dear Lord.
Oh, mate, this has been so much fun.
Thanks for having me.
I want to make sure that people... I don't know when this will come out. As I mentioned, not super organised, but rather it'll be at some point in the next 5 weeks.
Okay.
That doesn't mean too much to people who are listening to it in real time.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
whether or not... When does your tour end?
It ends May 17, so about 6 weeks away.
So maybe this will be out just in time?
Yeah, so, well, depending on when it comes out, doesn't really matter, but I'm touring from the start of April through to May 17, all the capital cities of Australia, so if you'd like to come out, I have tickets in my Instagram bio. It's billy.darcy on Instagram, and I have a podcast called Get Around Me, which is a solo pod, mostly yarns, bit of banter.
Yeah.
Kind of like half yarns, half talk about specifically Aussie news. That's why I do have quite an in-depth opinion on Robert Irwin, because I track his movements like a hawk.
Well, mate, if all fortune is on your side this year, maybe number 16, potentially even if you shoot for the stars, 15, 14 in the ranks.
Oh, my God.
Tommy Little.
Filling
see
my
you
head,
later.
brother.
Mate, I'm excited for you.
Awesome. Cheers, Brad. Appreciate it.